Hey, Stacy, I just wanted to kind of upload a final video to YouTube because I think you had problem with the OneDrive. And this just kind of points out some of the ideas I had for the building of your mileage app. Um, Again, I also added in the description a link to the Flow blog about how you can do this with buttons in Vlog, buttons in Flow, which I really love that solution because it makes it very easy for the person to not have to worry about how many miles they can. It just figures it out for them. But to point out some of the things that I added since we last talked is this one is the info or like this is what you need to know screen that might link off to different documents and different policies or might describe the policies behind this. I separate that out to keep the app clean. Everything in the app has a minimum font size of 14 as per like a recommendation of Veronica. But I think looking at it on my phone, I was doing some phone testing. I think you better stick to like 16 and above to kind of reach your older audience or people who may have trouble reading text on the screen. The welcome is just the user function. So the user dot full name is what's being used to show the person's name that looking at the screen. I'm also pushing that name into the title field of my SharePoint list items. Remember that you can push anything from the profile properties there, such as the department name or the country code and so forth. Whatever you have in your Azure Active Directory that might be helpful for filtering, sorting, grouping, and analytics, you think about what you might want to push into that single line of text field. Everything in there can be filtered, sorted, and grouped without any delegation limits. This particular box is similar to the one I showed you originally, which has a sum function in it. The sum functions will have delegation issues if you have more items than are indicated in your app settings for those. So if I go to app settings here, whatever the number that you have put here, if it goes over that number, delegation is a problem, right? If delegation stays under this, if the number of items stays under this number, then delegation won't be a problem. But that will return a delegation error because it's using a sum function. So because I was using sums for my statistics at the top, I chose to switch it into being a Power BI tile. And basically, I just connected to SharePoint using the Power BI desktop here. Once I was connected to the SharePoint list, I transformed the data by removing any unnecessary columns and making sure that my fields are the right numeric type. Like this should be number, fixed decimal number. And so you just want to make sure that your numbers and your dates are being read properly so that you can do calculations. Once you've done that, then you can make your visualizations and you publish them to Power BI. Now, when you publish your visualizations to Power BI, remember that you'll pick a workspace. So you pick the workspace where the users are that you want to share your visualization with. That's important for your app as well, because if they don't have access to the visualization in the workspace or that workspace, they won't be able to see that visualization in the app. Okay, so keep that in mind. Once you have that done, it's very easy to add tiles to Power BI using the control. So there is a control for that. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll with my mouse and that doesn't work. Power BI tile. I'm going to choose the workspace where I published it to. I need to choose the dashboard that it's living on, and then this will show me all the visualizations in that dashboard. you do need to think about formatting your tiles so that they'll fit nicely in your app. Okay, so try to get them as, wide or small or as comfortable as your app, but you can resize to a certain degree. So just try to get it to a good starting place. And as you change the size here, it will change the size in your app. Okay, so I like using Power BI tiles. It gets beyond the delegation limits. In this case, I have the visualization set to the value of miles, and the tooltip is set to receipt value so that they can hover over these and see them, see the receipt value as well. Another thing I did was I added a radio button for filtering by approved and pending. And basically, just helps me get to those faster. But this will throw a delegation error as well because this is a choice list. If you wanted to, you could create your drop down in Power Apps, leave the status column as single line of text in SharePoint, and then push that value in so that you could filter without a delegation limit. So this is only applicable if you're going to have a really large list of items, okay? But it is a way to work around some of the delegation limitations. If you do that though, like if you decide to use a single line of text for your status and you use the drop down in Power Apps to keep them consistent, also remember to customize your form as well, so it has that custom drop down so that if they go to SharePoint to make that addition or to do something there, they will still have those choices available to them. Now I'm also filtering sums here. So the sums that I'm using in total miles shown, which is the sum of the miles, and the sum for total expenses shown, which is the sum of the receipt values, is actually using the gallery all items method as the data source. So I'll just show you that. So if I click this X and then I click this, you'll see that, I don't know if you recognize, but browse gallery 1 all items is a data source that I can use to sum things. And notice I don't get a delegation error here because I'm summing the gallery as opposed to the list. And since the gallery was already filtered down to approved, I don't have to worry about doing that in my sum. So it's just another way to kind of manage that. If I do all, I get a full total, but if I, do any of this filter, these numbers will automatically dynamically change. Then as you look at these, you'll notice that anything that's assigned to me or anything that has been entered by me has this 3 dots over here. And that's because I can look at the details of my own things, but I can't look at the details of somebody else's. Now, another thing I added that I forgot to turn on here. So as I have these 2 buttons on this field called Save and Edit. So I'm going to open up this screen and you'll see that I have a Save and an Edit pencil icon. Now I just want to turn it on again because I turned it off earlier. Okay, so now you should be able to see it. So when the pencil item icon is clicked, this changes the default mode of this form to edit. And then when I save, so let's say we do 18 and we save, now it saves that value back into SharePoint. All right. But what I'm doing here, a lot of people use a details form for their details screen. I actually use a regular edit form so that I can swap back and forth. I can't swap a details screen as a details form, a display form in the same way I can swap out an edit form because of the 2 modes that are available. Okay, and then when it's successfully saved, then it returns back to the previous page. All right, now what you might also notice down there on the bottom is that I have an image of the location, and for that I use Bing Maps. And so if you add the Bing Maps connector, it's really easy to go in there and add a map along with push pin coordinates. Brian Knight did a really great video on how to use the Bing Maps connector. I'll put that link in the description below as well. Now, I also use the Bing Maps connector for calculating miles. So if we add a new one and I pick a date and I pick between buildings, right? Now I have this location selector where I say I went from building 99 to Advance C. And this uses the get route in Bing Maps to return the miles traveled. Now I used flow in the on change event of this to get the miles traveled because for some reason Power Apps wasn't letting me drill that far into the method. And I'll report that to see if I can get it fixed, because normally we should both work the same way. But for some reason, I'll just let you know, I had to use flow to get the miles traveled. Now, the key thing about miles traveled is I do let them edit it. And one of the reasons why I decided to let them edit it is because it depends on how you do that route, right? So I added a route trip. This is the suggestion from Bing method called get route that helps you know how to go somewhere. Basically, if you're going from here to here, then they suggest you go 148th Street all the way, right? And I think it's because I actually might have put an optional command in there called avoid tolls or avoid highways, or so you can actually specify what you want to avoid as you take this route. And then it says it should be 8 miles of travel and should take 13 minutes. So if you take this route, then that would be the exact number of miles that I had there before. But if they go a different way because of construction or whatever, it might take them a little longer. They might want to add additional miles, so I let them. This is the reason for the trip. If I saw patterns, so if I saw any patterns in the data that was there before, I might make this a drop down. And so why do I say that? It's because if I can avoid people typing on a phone app, I do. And that's just for the sake of the user. These radio buttons are nice and big and very finger friendly on purpose. Drop downs are a little bit harder to use on the phone. And so make them nice and big so that their fingers can hit them. Don't make them really tiny drop downs. And if you can pick up patterns in the data where people are going back and forth for very similar reasons, go ahead and give them a drop down of the most common reasons so that maybe they can pick those reasons. Or maybe it's not a drop down. Maybe they're icons that represent the different things they have to do. From building to building. Maybe everybody does either maintenance or a meeting or a customer connection. So there might be 3 icons, one that looks like a hammer, one that looks like a customer, and one that looks like something else, so that they can just tap on these things to limit their typing. So I'm kind of really anal about that. Keeping typing to a minimum for mobile applications. If this was a customized form where most people are going to be on the desktop, I wouldn't be thinking that way. And then we already talked about the upload photo in the last discussion we have, so I won't go over that. But then when you submit, it patches this data into SharePoint. I'll just pick up more swag, and then I'll submit this. This is the gas that I added to the car. And I'll submit this. And now I got them in descending order by date. So it's probably, how much did I don't remember what I just said, but it's probably this one here. And you can see everything that I did in January right there. So I have this sorted in travel date order. All right. Now, another option that I have there is other mileage. So you didn't go from building to building. Maybe you just went somewhere, right? So I used the slider because you can just drag on the slider to set your miles. And when you let go, it sets your miles. Mehdi did a great blog on how to change a slider handle into an image. But to make a long story short, you just add the image and then you set its XY coordinates relative to the handle of the slider, and off you go. So I just kind of used his blog to figure out how to do that. And so this slider is another mechanism of cutting down typing. I could have also used like an up down arrow to say add more to this number or subtract from this number, but you want to make it as finger friendly as possible. And so that's how I did that. You'll also notice that I only see the 3 dots, so I'll put them all back. I only see the 3 dots for the ones that I own. And this is my way of not letting other people investigate expenses that are none of their business. I could have also set the SharePoint list to have permissions that only show me what I did, but then this app would only be useful for me, right? Or for one person at a time. I wanted other people to be able to see what other people are submitting to get an idea of the trends on mileage and receipts. I just didn't allow them to get into the details by not giving them access to the details form. This is not a security mechanism, it's an app mechanism. So if it's important that they don't see other people's details, then you also need to set that security up on SharePoint, right? But once I see this, now I can go and look at the details of that. But I would not have been able to look at that any other way. All right, and sometimes I move things around. Like I have the reason up here on the top with the date as opposed to in the form. Whenever I find that my customers are focusing on something, so I'll ask questions to people I'm building apps for, like what's really important to you, or what do you want to get out of this arrangement, right? As opposed to just focusing on what do you want, I'm looking ahead. Like, okay, how do you want to analyze this data? What are you hoping to gain from it? How would you like to influence your users that are using it, right? Maybe they're having a problem with people not traveling too often or whatever. Maybe I want to make it red if your personal miles are already over the budgeted number of miles. So ask questions about business policies and business rules so that you can further optimize your apps. So I'm going to go back, and I think that's basically all I really wanted to show you. I think I talked about this, right? So this, I think the beautiful thing about this that I love is that these numbers here differ from this one, and that this one is looking at the list and this one is looking at the all items in the gallery. Again, just in case I forgot to tell you that, I'll just go there one more time. You can see this formula is using the items of the gallery as a data source. You can always do that. And you'll never get a delegation error in that case because you're not querying the list, you're actually just looking at the items in the gallery. And so when the gallery is filtered, that number will change. So that's one of my favorite things to do. I might do a separate video about that, but it's one of my favorite things to do is have these dynamic sums and values based on what the gallery has in it at the current moment. I think that's all I wanted to show you. I have some bars over here. So these gray bars are just rectangles inserted there, and they change to green when they're approved. And it just gives you a chance to quickly see what's approved when you're scanning. So if I go into my gallery, you'll see I have this little rectangle, and the fill color of it is green if it's approved, and it's that gray that belongs to this theme if it's not approved. It's just a quick way to catch the approved. Again, I will get a slight delegation error on this sometimes because again it's involving a choice list, but it depends. In this case it's not a problem because it's inside the template. It's not outside of the gallery. I also added 2 images in here, and I already gave you the images. So what I did was I gave you a folder that has the images in it. In case you want to reuse the images, you're welcome to use them. They're mine, I bought them. If I edit this and just click here, you'll see that this is just an image control. and then it has an image in it called Miles. So when you're doing images, you can always click add an image file and browse to whatever image you want, and then it'll automatically embed it in the app. Just remember that when you're embedding images in apps, that you cannot exceed 200 megs of total media storage. So that means images, videos, and audio cannot total above 200 megs. All right, and there's a link to how you can get some ideas on how to manage media. And then I just put that in front of the miles. This is a label that says this item miles, and there's another label that says this item gas, and then I put the gas icon in front of that. So basically those were my ideas. If you want to dig more into this, Stacy, just feel free to reach out or post a question on the forum. If you have some other ideas you'd like to implement, take this to wherever you'd like to go. Make sure you test it on your mobile device, download the Power Apps app, log in with your credentials, and then you'll be able to test your app before you share it out, right? If you use customized forms, it will be a bit easier because you won't need to patch your data. But I did send you, with the icons, I also sent you the patch statement needed to patch from this screen, because this screen is not using a form. Okay? So I hope this is helpful. I look forward to seeing how your app turns out, and hope you can use some of this. But if you don't want to use any of it, I won't be offended. I just wanted to give you those ideas. And I hope that you enjoy your Power Apps experience. Personally, I infopathed for many years, and I actually enjoy modernizing my forms and my apps using Power Apps a lot. And I think you will too. Okay. Well, it was nice talking to you, and I stand by waiting for any additional questions you have. Thank you, and happy Power Apping.